I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna fucking kill you. Welcome back to another episode of Muay Ying. Today I am joined by my lovely friend Belen, and today's topic will be the importance of all women spaces in Muay Thai. And this is something that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want to just talk about by myself because I thought it would be good to have the support from another woman, but also kind of just bounce some of these thoughts and ideas off of someone else, right? So, Belen, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here again and have a podcast together again.
Yay!
Yay!
I feel like every time I post something on social media about how it's important for women to have their own spaces, or more important for women to feel more included in things, there's always like a group of men that come into the comment section and they're like, we're going through those things too, you're not special, right? And then like a couple months ago there was a little battle in the comment section about how men also need all men spaces to foster like healthy masculinity and things like that, right? So that can be something we'll discuss later. But as a woman, right, what I have to say about all women spaces is that the most important thing to me about it, the most valuable thing, is that I feel like I'm not the odd one out. For me, I feel like that's so powerful because most of the time when I walk into like any kind of athletic space, Muay Thai included, it's like 95% men, right? And sometimes I get looks I don't want, or sometimes it's like, hey, look, there's a girl here, you know? So for me, it's mostly about feeling included and not feeling like I'm being the weird one in the group.
Yeah. I think as a woman it makes so much sense that we have the opportunity to do Muay Thai, but also martial arts in general, because it's obviously such a masculine sport with like it's obviously male dominated, but somehow it brings up a lot of resistance within, I think, then the male part of the community. And
Hashtag not all men.
Not
not all men.
Not all men. Yeah, that's interesting. That is definitely interesting. Because why would it bother men? Obviously, that we have our own female spaces when it comes to like sports or any type of activity. But obviously, we're talking here mostly about like Muay Thai and martial arts. Yeah.
I think it's because they feel the exclusion that we have always felt in these spaces. I mean, obviously I can't speak for them. I'm not a man. I don't know what it feels like to be a man and all of a sudden not being included in something, right? But I can imagine one of the factors is probably like, oh, look, here's a space where I'm not included in. I feel threatened by it. What do you think about that?
Yes, could very well be that they feel it as exclusion and they feel it as a sort of an attack on them. That they're like, oh, because you think I'm not providing you security, safety, and I'm a danger to you, you need your own personal space. Yeah, that could very well be.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about why these spaces are made in the first place, right?
Yeah.
My own personal experiences, I've seen these spaces being made because women with similar grievances are like, oh, I go through those things too. Why don't we train together? Or why don't we try to meet up and do all these things together? And then sometimes it turns into these group events, and then some of these group events become official. Some grievances that I know a lot of women like that are smaller like me, we can't find appropriate size sparring partners. Or we can't find people our weight class or close to our weight class to move around in, right? So it's not too much the case being in Thailand because there are smaller fighters here that are men. So I don't feel like it's too much of the case here. But I remember back home, like everyone was like at least like 5-6 inches taller than me and outweighed me by at least 20-30 pounds. So it was difficult to kind of like, work up a certain kind of confidence during sparring and clinching.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think, as a female fighter, I know how difficult it is to get good sparring partners, and the best sparring partners are women. That's just a fact. You can be like the best. I can be the best in my weight class in the world, but I still need female sparring partners to become better. Like it's not if you have like female fighters and male fighters the same weight class, same level, that 100% that match as well. If you know what I mean. Like you need, as a woman, you need female sparring partners. So in that sense, it's definitely valuable to train in that sense. Sometimes with only women.
It's more realistic,
More
right?
realistic.
In a way,
Yeah.
It like imitates your potential opponents a little bit more than just sparring with other men.
And I think as a woman, if woman, if you just start in the sport, it's not an easy environment to be in. To what you just mentioned,
not,
like it is often the case that the gym consists out of mostly like 90%, men, and it's very intimidating. Like it's all about strength, muscles, power. So it's not. It's a very intimidating environment, even if you're like confident. Like the first time that I went to PK, I was already experienced in Muay Thai. I already sparred, I already fought, and even I was intimidated by just sort of the amount of men and just the noises and just like the testosterone.
So imagine what it's like for someone who's like new, just stepping into that space and just being overwhelmed by that energy.
Yeah, so it's very logical.
Yeah, when there are like mostly male training partners, there can kind of be like these little microaggressions that I just sometimes I just don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Like for example, you probably have partnered up with the men that don't hit you back at all, and just stand there and let you hit them as much as they want until the bell rings. And it's just like, and they're just like, oh come on, just keep hitting me. It's okay, right? Hit me as hard as you want. I kind of get you're trying to be supportive, but you're not being supportive.
No.
Like this isn't do anything for me. Like if you wanted me to do this, I could just go hit the heavy bag. Have you had sparring partners like that yet?
Yes, for sure. These days, not so much anymore. But I remember when I started boxing and started competing in boxing, there were men. It was back in Germany. There were quite a lot of men who were very uncomfortable, like hitting me.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's understandable though, especially because we are still so very much in a minority, and that it's just very much not done for men, obviously, to hurt women. Right. So it's understandable that some men have issues with that. But I don't see that a lot with fighters, though. I see that mostly with like just hobbyists.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That.
Yeah, that's true. Or I have seen it with fighters that have only trained with men before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, those people, they're probably like kind of like have already retired or are long done with fighting because most gyms now, they have at least like a small population of women. So it's really rare these days to meet active fighters who have only ever trained with men. Yeah. It's definitely like a strange thing. It's like they're trying to be helpful, but it's, and maybe they have well intentions, but it's not it's not producing the well-intentioned effects, right?
Yes.
And because what we're there to do is we're there to learn and get better. We're not there to just beat someone up who is just compliant and just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna stand here and let you hit me because you're a woman. Yeah. Another kind of a conundrum, if you will, that I've been through during my time here in Thailand is sometimes I will spar a man who may either be equal in my skill level or not as high in my skill level, and they feel really threatened by that. Yeah. And then they feel like they need to use their brute strength to win, quote unquote, win in the sparring session. And I can feel that kind of energy right away. Like it's just, it's so, I don't even know how to explain it. Like just being on the receiving end of it, it's just like, why are you trying to knock me out?
Yeah. Same. I think it's even the case that younger fighters have that less than the older fighters. I don't know how you see that, but sometimes you spar with like an older fighter and they gas out, for example, and that's why you're, for example, winning, quote unquote. And then they get very nasty about that. Then you feel the energy that they start to use their brute strength to again, quote unquote, win. Yeah. but mostly with like the younger Thai fighters, I don't feel that very.
Teenagers are 50-50 for me.
Oh, yeah?
In my personal experience. So with the teenagers, you know, they can be like just absolutely adorable,
Yeah.
or they can be like just really going through it with their hormones, right?
Yeah.
And then like the type of people that are really going through it with their hormones, they tend to be really sensitive to other people making comments. So it's particularly in Thailand.
Interesting.
Any guy, no matter what their size, what their age, if they're sparring with a woman, clinching with a woman, or like, you know, God forbid the woman is better than they are, right? There's always a trainer or another fighter that's going to tease them about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And some of these fighters, they just they just take it, they don't care, they just keep doing what they've been doing, and it's great, right?
Yeah.
We know a couple of people like that at the gym. We love sparring with them, we love working with them.
Yeah.
They're tossing us on the ground, but we're having so much fun.
Yeah.
And then we also know a couple other people where they're just like so pissed off that you landed a kick on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when they're teenagers, they're super sensitive for like the peer pressure and for what the trainers say, and you know, that's true. And in that sense, the older fighters, that's a bit different. They've gone through that whole stage of becoming a man, and you know, all the hormones are less sort of flying around. But yeah, no, you're fully right. Yeah, I do think giving a counter argument for like the all female spaces, I do think it's very important to keep to keep also integrated spaces. So to keep gyms very mixed, and to have men and women really get used to training with each other.
Yes. So I definitely don't think all spaces need to be all men, all women, right? Ideally, there could be a healthy mix of all genders, all, you know, all kinds of people together, training together, feeling safe, and just all learning and having a good time, right? But right now, the reality is that a lot of people, especially women, they don't feel like they're not getting a lot out of training with 95% men spaces. Yeah. So that was just kind of how I was viewing it. Definitely, I think everyone should train in mostly like mixed spaces if they're comfortable with it, right? But I do think there's a lot of benefits to at least offering, like, let's say we're like a westernized gym, right? And we have like 15 classes a week. Maybe 5 of those classes a week can be all women spaces, in terms of like just like all women classes, all women drills, all women sparring, things like that.
But could you argue that having like sort of too many, quote unquote, like only female spaces could sort of could be counterproductive for the sort of integration in the gyms? So that because you could say that, okay, women, when they just start training and start sparring, they can do it with only women until they're like sort of confident enough and good enough that they can train with the men. And you could argue, like, by doing that, men don't have to adjust, so they can just keep doing what they're doing, and they don't have to adjust to different skill levels and different.
I see what you're saying, and I think the answer to that is kind of, it just depends on why a woman is looking for those all women spaces, right? So some women just feel like that integration has never happened to them in those all gender spaces, that they feel like they need to look for a place where they feel like, oh, I don't need to explain myself, right? I don't need to explain what I'm going through. I can train with people that just get it, and I don't have to deal with, you know, all the stuff that we just mentioned. And then there are other people who they just don't feel safe in that environment, or they think it's really intimidating, right? So I just think it depends. And also there are some people like, I think it's safe to say, like people like me and you, where every now and then it's just, we have fun just being around feminine energy, you know, like we're not trying to like, we're not like hating men, right? Let's make that very clear. Like our agenda here is not hating men and like exclude all men. No, our agenda, like what people are trying to do with these all women spaces, is to bring women together and to give them a place where they feel understood and supported and connected to each other, right? Whereas a lot of times with these spaces that are traditionally all men anyway, like you look at the fight scene and most of the gyms, they're mostly like all men anyway, where a woman coming in, like there have been people who are active in excluding the women from participating in the first place.
Yeah.
Whereas the purpose of the all women spaces, they're different from that.
Yeah, very interesting. Just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. No, I understand. It's good to bring these things up just to like, because I'm sure like some of the people listening are just like, oh, what about this and what about that? So it's definitely good to bring up these spaces and like we said earlier, not try our best not to be a echo chamber.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And because another devil's advocate argument is that once you offer all female classes, for example, and all female sparring classes, I can imagine, and I'm not talking about personal experience, it can happen that certain women who are really not very experienced yet, they're not fighters, for example, that they can sort of be sent quote unquote to these all-female classes because they're like, well, you're not good enough to train with the top fighters or just with the men in general, so it's better if you just train with
But
the
who's
women.
setting them? Men coaches? Who are just basically...
True.
Yeah, it could be I guess my point is it could be misused, and I've been in that situation once when I just started boxing, and I was obviously shit at the time. I wasn't very good, and then I was really asked to go to the women's class. So the women's class, I guess, what I'm trying to say, not just thinking of talking about it, it was sort of used as a way to get women out of
Right,
the class.
but then in that case, like the one you just said, it's the issue is not the women's classes. The issue is the perspective that men stereotype against women, that they're not serious, that they can't be good. You know what I mean? And these are the exact kind of microaggressions we're trying to get away from. It's just like, woman to woman, like we're not going to tell each other that. You know what I mean? We're like, especially with women fighters that get together, they try to lift each other up, empower each other, and if we at one point have to deal with coaches like that, right, who are just like, oh no, just go train with the women because you're not good enough. These are the exact things that don't empower us.
Yeah. So I guess that's something maybe for the listeners, sort of to really keep an eye on when you have those kind of classes in your gym, that it's not being misused.
Yeah, for sure. And I think having like a coach who's actually really supportive of like lifting like marginalized groups up in the gym, that's really important because there are a lot of people now who are just making these all-women classes as money grabbers because it's like, oh, I see a lot of women in my area are doing it, let me just do it to make money. Yeah, I mean, it's a business at the end of the day, but your purposes should be well-intentioned. Otherwise, shit like that happens, right?
Been there.
I mean, absolutely sucks.
And it's like that has been almost 10 years ago, right? It was in Amsterdam when I just started boxing, and I still remember that. I was like, that you just like send away.
Oh man, that.
Yeah, and it was not even like with bad intentions by this certain man.
But I mean that's their
Just
ingrained biases at work, and they're not even thinking twice about it.
No.
And then maybe when you're new, you didn't think twice about it either.
No. I was just like, oh okay, I'm not good enough. So
I mean, I think it's important to discuss that, like, we all have ingrained biases in some way or another, and then like when it comes to the topic of like misogyny, we all have ingrained misogyny to some extent. Even women, sometimes like we catch ourselves like thinking certain things or saying certain things. It's just like, oh, I'm a feminist, but you know what I mean. We're all guilty of something. But
you have your biases, and especially the older men, they were brought up. If they trained since they were young, like obviously back in the days there were no women in gyms, so obviously that is still very new. So they act out of biases. Which is very normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not. This is the problem I have of cancel culture. I think if people intend 100%. To do well 100%. And they're trying, even if they're failing along the way, but they're trying really hard to better themselves and to learn, why are we canceling these people?
Right.
These are the people we need.
Agree.
Yeah.
Like
it's also for the listeners who are not trying to cancel many.
I mean, if you cancel every single person who makes a mistake, you might as well just cancel yourself.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
like, be quiet. Another counter argument that I've heard from that we actually discussed at the beginning was, well, it's important to have all male spaces too, because young men need to learn how to become like need male role models, and so they can foster like healthy masculinity, right? So let's talk about that.
Oh, I need to think about that. You can go first.
The concern is valid.
Yeah.
There definitely needs to be more push towards people to develop healthy masculinity and to deal with their masculinity in not just healthy ways, but in productive ways that harmonize in society, and it's not just like a man on man on man, man to man kind of thing. Healthy masculinity can also mean different things to different people. Just from what I know, a lot of the struggles that men go through, like when you talk about like, you know, their depression and their higher rates of suicide and things like that, a lot of these things are brought on by the same structures that we're complaining about, right? Like the same structures that say that women should be this are also the same structures that are saying like men can't talk about their feelings, otherwise you're quote unquote gay or quote unquote not a real man, you know. So we're kind of fighting the same structures here, but for whatever reason, a lot of these people who are kind of attacking the fact that we, like, some of us just enjoy having all women's spaces, that they feel, I mean, I don't really know how they feel, but their argument is that, well, we how come we can't have like an all men's seminar? How come we can't have like an all men's training class? Right?
Yeah. So what I would like to say about healthy masculinity, that I do think it's good that that's a topic these days, especially in light of, you know, that women focus very much on feminism. I think men should talk about like, masculinity, and what does masculinity mean these days, especially with like the rise of feminism. If I then think about like all men's classes, I'm not sure if that would then achieve the goal of having healthy masculinity. Yeah, but I definitely think it's a very important topic, because I can imagine a lot of men, especially white men, are very confused these days. But like, what can I say? Like, how should I treat women? Like, I was just talking about it the other day, yesterday actually, with somebody in the gym, a guy from the US who's visiting now, and he was. I was doing like a strength drill after my pet work and sparring, and I was doing some strength training, and I was not doing it correctly. And he was like looking at me, and I saw the hesitation in his eyes, like, I don't want to now come to you and mansplain, you know, that you're not doing it correctly. But in the end, because he was looking at me that way, I was like, I asked him like, oh, what do you think I should how should I do it differently? Ask him for advice, basically. And then he gave me advice, and he gave me a really good tip to do it differently. And then I said, you know, these days I think men are very scared to give advice in the gym, or to, you know, say, to give women advice, I guess.
Right.
And I think that's because of just all the shifts in hierarchy, power mechanisms.
I think, there's a lot going on at the same time. And, you know, with the term mansplain, it's usually when a man tries to explain something to a woman under the assumption that she doesn't know, right? So if this guy is looking at you doing the exercise and you're doing it wrong, then it's very clear that you don't know, you know?
Right.
Whereas, like, if you're just getting ready and he hasn't seen anything and he just assumes you don't know, then that's completely different from him actually seeing you do it and knowing you don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I do think that knowledge, like the base level of knowledge that you have, and that bias that you have about women and their skill levels plays a huge factor in this.
That's true.
Like for example, to drop into like a different gym, you were visiting in a city and you were sparring, and all the men there just assumed that you had no, like, if this was your first ever sparring class, then that would be mansplaining if they were to say anything to you without even assessing your skill level first, right? But if let's say you guys are sparring and then they keep getting you caught with the same thing over and over, and they're saying like, and then they're like, hey, this is a good way, this is what I would suggest for you to start blocking this or start like moving away from this. That's not mansplaining.
No, exactly. But I do think that there are people who think that's mansplaining, but that's, I guess, just because of the discussions these days about that topic.
I think it's good if people try to think twice about these things, right?
And also the way how you say it, and also that you ask like, oh,
is it okay?
Is it okay if I give you advice on that? So, but in that sense, you know, healthy masculinity, I do think it's a very, very important topic.
Yeah, and also like just because a space is all men doesn't mean that there is any
That's the
of healthy
thing,
masculinity. And we've seen it in the spaces where we are the only women, where it's just like, well, it's 99.9 men, so, and sometimes they forget that we're even there, right? So it's just like, it might as well be all men. You see how they interact, and it's just like, this is not healthy, these are not healthy traits.
So it's actually the other way around, I would say, but I'm not a man, so I can't speak for that, but from where I'm sitting, sort of, and I think we agree on that it's actually for healthy masculinity, it could even be better that it's sort of integrated. But it's a good question, like should it be okay that men want all men's classes? I think that's a very interesting question.
I mean, like I said before, like most of these spaces were all meant to begin with, so, and it's just like, I feel like sometimes with these arguments against all women's spaces, when they're made by men, right, it's like they're trying to push this like, oh, we have suffered in the same way you suffered. Oh, we want the same things that you want because we've been through no, but then that's absolutely bullshit. Like, they haven't been through the same like power struggles, like lacking positions of authority and stuff like that. When you look at people who are on like combat sports sanctioning boards and like positions of power, they're mostly men. It's only in like the past like few years where that's changed to like including some women in the mix, right? So it's just like men have traditionally held these positions of power, so I feel like them trying to equivalate their experiences, right? And I'm not saying like men don't struggle, right? We all have our own struggles. It's just that when it comes to missing opportunities and missing the general base level of like, oh, I mean, she might know things despite her gender, like it's not the same. It's really not the same.
I also even think that having men being more considerate about women could benefit other men. Like, there are men who have obviously, who don't want to, for example, if you think about like Muay Thai and sparring together, because that's obviously these situations where these type of clashes occur. There are men who don't want to spar hard and they just want to be technical and they don't have an ego. And I think with having the alpha men being more considerate about that because of women, I think could benefit a lot of men as well.
We talked this before in our like personal time, but let's talk about that term alpha man, right?
Alpha man. Yeah.
What an alpha is probably not what an alpha, like what people think alpha is. Like sometimes people think of like alpha as like this guy of like huge muscles, is like always like angry all the time, and it's like, you gotta listen to me because I'm the top dog here. But I mean, we've come to conclude that when it comes to true like sense of security of the self and like confidence, that's not something that confident people do.
I'm so happy that you addressed this, actually, because it's one of my favorite recent topics these days. The book from Frans de Waal that I read.
What's the book called?
Might even be called just Gender.
Okay.
Frans de Waal is Dutch primate biologist.
Okay.
Is that how it's called? Yeah,
okay.
Biologist. Yeah, he specialized in primates, and he has done like research his whole life. And now recently he did research on like the gender differences in in primates, and he also researched like the whole phenomenon of like alpha male. And his conclusion is that it's very, very misunderstood by human beings, by us, because actually the alpha males in the primate society, especially the how do you say it, the primate species that have alpha males, because not all like species have alpha males, but the ones that have the alpha males are typically male figures who actually are very focused on like the harmony in the group. They're obviously the strongest because they need to defend themselves and they need to be able to defend like the group. They are actually very considerate towards like all the other apes, primates in their group, and so it's not like selfish, angry primates that are
their needs are the only needs.
Right? Exactly. Their needs are the only needs, and they've just like a sort of a veto on sort of who can leave or stay in a group, or they
because they say so.
Because they say so, or they're not considered as bullies at all. Yeah, so they're really considerate, strong, especially physically strong, of course, but very considerate and focused. The main focus priority is really the harmony in the group. And I think that sort of that alpha male sort of figure, especially in martial arts, is just so misunderstood in that sense.
We see a lot of figures who are like the meathead slash bonehead types, or they're what you would describe like someone who's just like chronically angry and just like always demanding that they have things that way because they say so.
Like they're having the power in everything.
And but when I think about my own experiences and my own interactions with people in the Muay Thai spaces and also outside Muay Thai spaces, the people that I consider actual leaders, right, are people who care about the group and put the needs of the group and direct the group in that way instead of putting their own needs above the group. So there's a lot of discussion between leader and a boss, right? And you if someone sticks with like a certain company for a long time, it's because they see that they have a leader, someone who's going to take care of them and is also compassionate about their needs and their concerns. Whereas a boss is just someone who's just do this. You suck. True.
Absolutely. And even amongst primates, not every alpha male even has to be like the most physical strong. Like there are even certain species where they're alpha females, and they're often like the alpha female for a very long time, and in the end of their reign, they're not strong anymore, but they're still like very respected for their sort of social behavior in the group. I
think that can be like a good takeaway for those men who are really interested in fostering healthy masculinity. So back to the point about what some men make about having these all men spaces, I think they're completely valid if you want to immerse yourself in having healthy masculinity, but the fact that it is an all male space, just that does not make it by default a healthy place for men to be. And so sometimes it's also like you said, like sometimes men they don't want to just spar hard all the time. Sometimes they just want to work on technique. But sometimes from other men, they hear things like, "Oh, stop being a pussy," right? And like I've seen this unfold in front of my face, like, "Oh, stop being a little bitch," you know, just suck it up. And these are things that we hear directed towards men in and out of Muay Thai. So it's like if they want to be in a space where they also feel like they don't need to match up to that kind of energy all the time, it's like, why can't they? You know, like they're not any less of a man. And sometimes, like you said, where they get these spaces might be the spaces where there are women.
No, I just think talking about this, it's like there's so many parallels with my corporate life. So I work for a big Swiss company. So many European countries these days have quotas, like having females in their top leadership. But I think because we are a Swiss company, we don't have that yet. So we are really, our top leadership is very much male dominated. So I feel that our management, and I'm interacting with top management on a daily basis in my role, that's basically, it's an all male space that I'm sort of interacting with. There would be such a different energy if there would be more like women included. And I guess I'm bringing it up because I think it's also there, like the men would benefit from having more females in the top leadership. And I think that's with martial arts also the same thing. I think that in that sense we can all benefit from having this sort of healthy mix between like femininity and masculinity.
Keyword healthy, right? Like I think if more people just try to do things that are more towards harmony, or more towards like, oh, how can I make this better for everyone, then there would be so much less of this conflict that we talked about throughout this episode, for men or for women. But the problem is that sometimes people either don't feel like their needs are being met, or they don't want to change, or you know, so that kind of makes things obviously tricky. And this is why we have discussions like this.
And also what I was thinking about all female spaces is that I think, and I guess that's also one of the most logical arguments for having all female spaces for martial arts is that it makes women feel safe, and especially women who have gone through things that makes them feel unsafe generally if they're in close contact with men. I think it's really important that these women have their own space. And if you look at statistics, like 20 to 25% of women have gone through something negative, like in terms of like sexual assault or like harassment. Like this is not like 2 or 3% of the female population, but it's much more. So then if you just start training and you don't have like the desire to fight, for example, to compete, needing to train with women or with men, to spar with men is obviously one of the most sort of intimidating and confronting things to do.
Yes.
So it's very important that that group of women, which again I think is a substantial group of women, that they need the space to feel safe and to get more confident. And also to be able to defend themselves, right? That's also a reason why some people start to do martial arts, is that they need to...
And also on top of like feeling safe, despite their history of like maybe sexual assault. Another benefit of going to these all women spaces is that you can wear whatever you want and not have to worry about also like people ogling you or making comments on stuff, So it's just... It's nice to not have to be sexualized when you don't want to be sexualized, which is a major thing that a lot of women they find very frustrating sometimes. Like whether it's like a teammate flirting with them or like a coach trying to date them, these things all happen. So I think it's good. It's good to at least offer it to people, even if they don't want to take it. It's good to offer it to people because it's something that's needed, and I think the more and more we discuss these things, the more women are chiming in. It's just like, I could definitely benefit from having like an all-girls sparring class or stuff like that. Yeah. Last year in May, I co-founded all women's non-binary are welcome to it as well, like a online space for women in combat sports. And just the amount of like support and feedback, it was just also positive from the members or like people who were like, oh man, I really needed something like this. There were some group members where they don't have any women teammates to talk to about their stuff, and they're just able to kind of go into the group and just like ask things like, hey, how do you cut weight on your period? Or hey, I don't have anyone to ask about this because there's this one girl, she does kendo, and then she has like this really old school coach that makes them practice nonstop. She's like, when I get my period, like how am I supposed to change my tampon and stuff like that, like stuff that you can only find support in a group like that. So, and just like having the space to also just like share your grievances and just be like, oh shit, I go do that too. It's not just me. It's not just you. And sometimes it's just like, oh, a lot of people go through that. It's not just me. It makes you feel less alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Extremely important. I mean, we say it often to each other, but like we're so lucky to have each other.
Yeah, we are.
That you can just like talk to each other on a daily basis about things that you come across, that you encounter. But just even if you're imagine that you're new into a gym. Like we have a couple of new girls now at PK. You just start sparring. You're new to Thailand. You just start sparring with the men there. Sometimes they go too hard or they go too soft, to your point. Just going through that on your own and having no one to talk to about how to solve that. Or what you say, like having a trainer that hits on you, having fighters that touch you, that comment on your sports bra, for example. And these are not exemptions. Like it happens
a lot.
We're not exaggerating here. And like we can deal with that because we are also like a little bit older. We have gone through it. We have the experience. We have each other to talk to. But if you're like 20 years old, you're new to Thailand, all these things happen. You think you're going crazy because you think it's your fault, right? And you think that you're doing everything wrong. And then you cannot talk about it with your friends in, back home, especially in European countries, because they don't understand because it's a very different world out here. But of course, you're
speaking from experience, right? FYI, Belen is from the Netherlands. If anyone's wondering, she's not just spewing out stereotypes.
Yeah, because they don't understand, because it's so foreign. Literally, it's very foreign. Like, these things don't happen that much in the Netherlands.
Not out in the open anyway.
No,
right? Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to talk about these things. And again, if you're new to the scene here, you think it's all your fault. Right? That's what women tend to think. They're like, oh, I sparred the wrong way, or I looked at that trainer that hit on me the wrong way. So that's
You start to internalize it.
Totally.
And you really start to think that, like you said, something is wrong with you. And I think it's so important when people start talking about it and women come together and they're just like, oh, I went through the same thing and I thought the exact same things, you know. Then we can come up with solutions.
Exactly.
Anything you want to plug? Anything interesting you've read lately, or?
Well, I think that podcast that we talked about the other day. These days he writes a lot about healthy masculinity, and he researches like white males, basically, in the US.
White, straight males.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listened to most of it as well, and I do think he brings out a lot of good, interesting, valid points. But like I told you, he doesn't cover a lot of bases. He doesn't look at things from a certain perspective, but it's also our job as people who consume content to always question what we're listening to, right? Not just
It's definitely not that I agree with everything that he says, but I think it's just interesting that he talks about that with all the different sort of professors that get platforms these days. That are obviously more focused on diversity and on, again, like feminism and.
I do think it's a step in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I think he has an interesting, but just he has another perspective on it.
He's just giving food for thought.
Food for thought. And then Frans de Waal, like about like the primates and especially the comparisons that he makes with human beings.
Why don't we look up the podcast?
Yes.
The name of the podcast, the name of the episode, and then also the name of the book, and then the author of the book, and we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah. So if people are interested, they can check it out for themselves, since we can't. It escapes us right now.
Yes, I can't think of anything right now. It's complete brain fart. But I have one question for you. Do you think the ultimate goal should be that we don't need all female classes anymore?
Yeah, of course. I think that the ultimate goal, right, at the end, is that everyone can be training together without all these issues, right? So obviously, as a woman, I can talk about the issues that I face and a lot of issues that my fellow women fighters face. Yeah. Right. And because we discussed this a lot, me and you, and also we discussed this a lot in the online community, and a lot of us, we have the same overlapping, like the same things that we really would like to see changed, right? And then as for what men are going through, I can't talk about their experiences because I am not a man, but I can talk about what I've seen man to man, which is not healthy and which negatively affects them emotionally and physically, right? So I do think that, you know, I'm not saying like all like men are the enemy here. Like we discussed, women on women misogyny is also a thing, right? The ultimate goal, like these all women spaces and a lot of these things that we talked about, it's just a very small chunk of a very bigger picture. And then with this bigger picture, there are so many factors and so many other discussions that we can have, each one being like its own podcast or you know, documentary even, you know. And the bigger picture, I think the thing that we should all be working towards at the end is that we walk into a space, we all feel accepted, we don't feel like we need to like be macho or pretend to be tough or put ourselves in dangerous situations to prove ourselves. I think we should all just be able to walk into the space and do what we went there to do, which is to learn.
It's interesting. I do think, yes, I agree with all of that. That, you know, obviously the ultimate goal should be that we should everyone should feel accepted when they walk into a gym and that they feel equal and get all the equal opportunities, like etc. But I'm not sure if it's the goal that there shouldn't be any like all female classes anymore, because I think there's always value in just having sometimes classes with only women. Even for me, like if there would be women sparring here in Bangkok like once a month, like I would definitely go there. Although I would train in a gym where things are perfect, basically.
Right.
Then I would still prefer sometimes to just only train women. And I'm saying it's also because of my office career that sometimes we have these all-female trainings, and it's amazing. Like it's amazing.
What's so different about?
It's the energy. It's like there's no ego. It feels that you can be truly yourself. Like you don't have to have your guard up. Like normally in my day-to-day office life, I always have to think very hard about like appearance. How do I talk in meetings?
How do I come across as not too bossy?
Exactly,
Or
not
Not too bossy, but I have to be
assertive.
nice, but I have to be assertive. I can't get emotional. If I'm angry, I can't get too loud. So it's like you really have to think always like, okay, well, you know what's
Just always
trying to
how do I come across?
there's a term for that, code switching. I mean that doesn't cover all the things that you discussed, but basically like when people interact with different groups, they kind of put on a different face or a different mask in a way to kind of accommodate that.
and that's what you do as a woman in a male-dominated like office of how do you say, like a company. That's what you do like all the time, and it's sometimes when you have these all-female trainings, it's a completely different energy, completely different.
That brings up a good point. I taught a few like all women Muay Thai seminars. I taught a couple at Wooden Man Muay Thai in San Francisco, and I taught one at Heinz Combat Sports. And I don't know if it's the fact that they're just not used to these all women spaces, but there's a certain type of energy compared to the ones where it's like mixed gender. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, but what I am saying is that these women, they come in and they're relaxed by default. And it's like you said, they don't have their guard up. They're relaxed by default, and they're just like, this is so cool that I get to be part of this all women seminar. And they're just all about supporting each other and helping each other from the get-go.
Yes.
From the get-go. I mean, like, if who's to say, maybe if we ever get to the point of like true equality, that kind of novelty will wear off, right? Like, we don't know. We have so many like steps to go before we get there, right? But I do have to say that in my experiences right now in this modern world, that this is the case, that these experiences, they feel novel, and they feel so needed that when I come in to teach and I just feel, and I see people who like don't know each other or train on different sides of the city, and then they're meeting for the first time, they're just like smiling and laughing and having a good time, and it's really so different, and it really goes to show that like these spaces, for those who I guess are not used to it, they really, really appreciate them. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I can fully imagine that.
And I taught a couple privates to this woman, and she messaged me like later in the evening. She's just like, Angela, I just like burst into tears because I just realized like training with you was the first time that I trained with a woman with my same skin color and stuff. So it's just like it like representation matters, you know, and it's just and for those who have never not seen themselves in other people, it's something really hard to grasp and understand, which is why we're bringing up points like straight white men, right? Because this is the population that's represented the most, right? And then we don't have anything against straight white men. We don't have anything against people who identify with the majority, right? No. But there needs to be also, I guess, maybe a separate discussion of like, maybe if you're part of the majority, it's a little bit difficult to understand what the flip side of the experience is.
I do want to highlight one other point, but I think
just one.
Okay, then that's maybe we should make another podcast about that. But that's about like sort of female sort of role models and female sort of champions in the gyms. So, and I feel that responsibility also at PK with now more women, coming in.
Especially with the really young women.
Exactly. Like I'm always, you know that, like I'm always like mothering a little bit over them, wherever I can, because I feel that responsibility of being there for other women. And I really hope that women can do that all around the world, that they sort of be that role model and like reach out to these girls, younger girls, to help them. And I'm saying that because as a woman, and again I see parallels with my office career as well, is that women tend to fight very women need to fight very hard to become like a good fighter in a male-dominated gym, or become like a manager in like in a company. So you're often very tough and proud, etc. So it's less. You tend to be less sort of vulnerable towards than people that you don't really know very well, and especially when there are only a couple of women in the gym. Sometimes there's some rivalry, right?
Yeah.
And some competition, and I think that's really bad for this whole topic. So I definitely think that women should be nice to each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think what the intention of these all women spaces is kind of foster kind of support,
exactly.
Right? But I definitely see what you mean. Like, well, first to talk about how you feel like it's your responsibility to kind of look after some of the younger women fighters. When I see women come into the gym, I do try to make like, you know me, I really don't talk to anyone in the gym. Like, I talk to Belen, and then I talk to maybe like my trainer and maybe one other person. It's not because I'm mean. It's just because like I there's just so many people at the gym. I feel overwhelmed, and I'm just training. I just don't like talking, right? But I do try to make that extra like step when I see a new woman in the gym, especially if she feels like overwhelmed or things like that, because we know how it feels. We know what it's like to be in this space and just like, oh, I really want to learn this. I really want to be a part of this, but I feel so intimidated right now. Like we've been there, and it's just like, if back then maybe if someone reached out to us like that, then it would have made our journey that much easier, or made us more hopeful for our own futures,
Right.
So I do think that there's a lot to discuss when it comes to women misogyny, ingrained misogyny, right? I actually did write an article about that, and if you do want, we can do like a separate podcast episode discussing it.
I think it's extremely interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's wildly interesting. Yeah.
Just the fact that like it's women supporting other women. I mean, the thing is, like, it would be great if more men can also support us as well. Like really support us, not just say that support us, but really support us with their actions, right? And that can also be another topic, how men can actually support women instead of saying that they support women, right? And we know of so many great people in our lives, men that do fully support like what we do, and they listen to like the things that we talk about with like an open heart, and really try to challenge what they're thinking of, even if it's really difficult for them. So I'm not saying that a lot of these people don't exist at all. I'm just saying that the majority of people that we encounter, especially at like a huge camp like PK or like a lot of these male-dominated spaces like back home, it's a very sadly rare occurrence.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last one. No, that was it. No, good combo.
Yeah, this is cool. How can people find you on Facebook or I mean, not Facebook, we don't use Facebook. You don't even have Facebook. Okay. No, I misspoke, okay? How can people find you on Instagram if they want to Insta-stalk you?
Insta-stalk me. Please Insta-stalk me. So my Instagram handle is Belen, BELEN_NYCC.
You can join this online combat sports community for women if you're non-binary. We also know that you feel even more marginalized than us women do, so please, you're welcome to the space. We're sorry about the pronouns and stuff, but you're welcome to the space. And the online community is called Fight Hers, so FIGHTHERS, and you can find it in the link to my bio. I will link the website in also the show notes if you want to join us. We are a small group of like maybe just like a couple hundred members. Not everyone participates in our discussions and stuff like that, but we are trying to hold like regular workshops and open Q&As and stuff, just to support and foster community and help support women in combat sports, which is like, if you can't tell by now, it's very much needed. Anyway, this is your host, Angela Chang. You can find me on Instagram, Angela SITAN. So see you in the next episode of Muay Thai. Thanks, Belen.
Thanks, Angela.